In this module, you're going to learn about subdivisions of various degrees of trends and countertrends. So before we get started and learn about subdivisions, I just want to talk a little bit about the labeling convention. Now, in traditional Elliott wave, there's a really complicated and extensive labeling conventions for trends and countertrends. Let's take a look at this first chart, and this is labeling conventions of trends. Trends, impulsive trends, are labeled with numbers. So there can be many different degrees or time frames. So how do we distinguish them? How do we distinguish the subdivisions within the larger time frames? Well, again, in conventional Elliott wave, there's a complicated, extensive systems of cycles and primary and intermediate and minuet and minute and et cetera, of endless degrees of trends and endless labeling conventions. So I try to keep it real simple. I don't give names or specific terms of specific degrees. I keep it real simple. I usually have two, maybe no more than three different degrees that are labeled on a chart. Occasionally, if it's a long-term chart, there may be four, but that's pretty much the extent. So it's my approach is just so that we can distinguish one degree from another, the subdivisions of the higher time frame. And it should be visual, it should be obvious. Here's what I tend to use. These are the four different fonts and conventions that I use for. I can't imagine any time I'd have more than 4 degrees on a chart. Usually there's only 2. Major trends I'll have in a large font parentheses. Typically, let's call them primary trends. The obvious significant trends on any chart would be, and usually in that dark blue, fairly large font. And then all it does is just the font gets smaller. It's that simple. So let's take a look at what the data that I have on this chart. For instance, coming off this low, there's a significant advance. I've got that labeled a 1. And then we have an ABC. We'll look at corrections more in a minute to complete a 2. And then we have another significant advance. And how does that break down? Well, it's going to be a 3, obviously, but then it's going to break down. Remember, impulsive waves break down typically into 5-wave impulses. So all we do is use the smaller font, and maybe we'll change the color of it. Something that's just obvious that it's a breakdown, it's a subdivision within the larger time frame or the larger degree. So then we have a 1 and then a 2, and then we begin the wave 3 of 3 up. And look at it. It's obviously subdivided as well. So real simple. Just use a smaller font. So just another, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 3 of 3. So there we're showing 3 different degrees of change, 3 different time frames, or 3 different degrees. I'll go ahead and expand this data a bit. So there we have all of the data up into the higher time frame wave 3, and it's actually broken down into, let me start back here. This is the wave 3, and here's the 1, 2 of 3, and then here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that completes the 3, wave 4 correction. The wave 3 itself was subdividing, the wave 5 itself was subdividing nicely into 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we got into 5 of 5 of 5 of 3, actually 4 degrees here, where the wave 5 of 5 of 5 of 3 subdivided nicely into 5 waves as well. So again, I keep it pretty simple, and it should be pretty obvious. So let me go back to this first advance. I don't have a name or a term for that. All is I want the viewer to understand is this is 1 degree and this is the degree that's labeled to it. This is a smaller degree. This is a degree, a label that is related to that degree, as is this, as is this. And then, of course, it's the ones with the similar fonts that are all related to each other. They're part of that series or that structure. So if we were writing about this different wave structure, how would we label one of the swing highs or lows and distinguish between where it is within the structure, within the larger time frame or the smaller time frame? Let's take what I got labeled here, this wave 3 high, and let's look up here to see exactly what this label, the full label, would be at this point. Well, we always start with the smallest subdivision when we label. So this is a 5 of the wave 3 of the wave 3. So it's the 5 of 3 of 3. We began the 3 back here where the 2 is. So it begins with the smallest to the larger. Another way to write it is wave 5 of 3 of 3. But this is the typical convention you'll see. And when writing about it, I don't use different fonts, different colors, or whatever. Just want to make it as plain and simple as possible. Labeling begins with the smaller time frame to the larger time frame. So let's move up a ways. This is a wave 3. So it's a wave 3 of what? Well, it's a wave 3 of 5 of 3. So we're beginning from this wave 2, higher time frame, wave 2 low. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it's the 3 of 5 of 3. So again, we begin with the smaller subdivision, how it relates to the next larger time frame, and how that time frame relates to the next larger time frame. Pretty straightforward. Corrections, or countertrends, are labeled with letters. And again, we want to make it obvious what degree or what relationship the different trends, the different swings or sections have to each other. So I keep it pretty simple, and again, I don't give these labels as to what degree they are, like if are they primary or cycle or intermediate, etc. The objective, because all of our objectives are practical trade strategies, is for the viewer to quickly understand what's going on, what are these wave counts, how do they relate to each other. So let's take a look at this data again, coming off of what I had labeled the wave 5 of 5 of 5 of 3 high. So he came down in A, B, C, and probably a higher time frame A. So we have a little different font, a little darker font, A, B, C correction. Again, probable wave B, and we can see that these two relate to each other. They're part of that structure. And then we have a decline, and it was a 5-wave decline, typical of a wave C. And this A, B, C, it turns out, was a higher time frame wave A. So it's labeled a wave A, and all it is a larger font, a different color, so you can distinguish that it's obvious a higher time frame trend. It's a higher time frame structure than what we're showing within that trend. And then we advanced into this high. I've got labeled as A, B, C, D, E, into the high, wave A high. Correction, wave B, another high to a wave C for an A, B, C, higher time frame B. A, B, 5 sections down into a wave C of 4. So pretty straightforward. And actually, I'm looking at this. This should not be there, should it? There we go. I got too many, put too many labels on it. So the whole idea is you can distinguish what how the different sections relate to each other and how they're subdividing and what the subdivisions are related to. Just obviously these are the smaller letters. They're not bolded, so they're of a lesser degree than the bolded letters. The capital letters that are a little larger font and are bolded are obviously a little larger degree than the other letters. And at some point, we may even see these in parentheses, which would even be a much larger degree. But you won't find more than, or rarely, more than 4 degrees on any chart that I'm showing. And the 4 degrees would probably only be if it's a very long-term, multi-year chart, looking at major swings. For practical trading strategies, we tend to only look at 2 degrees. We look at the degree we're trading and then one smaller degree to identify the subdivisions to get an understanding and a setup for when that degree we're trading is over and ready to formulate a specific trade strategy. So if we're writing about this different wave structure and different points within the wave structure, how would we describe it? Again, we label from the smaller time frame to the larger time frame. Let's take a look at this point in time, for instance. Well, we're looking at it as of this point in time as if this is a C of B of 4, because we're beginning from the higher time frame wave 3, and then we've got an A and then an A, B, C of B. So it's a C, a B of 4. And one more simple example as of this point in time is we start with the smaller degree and we work up to the larger degree. So this point is a wave 5 of C, and this is a larger degree C because we can see it's a capital and a blue letter of 4. So it's a 5 of C of 4. So whenever we're writing about any point within a wave structure, we can write about it, we can label it like this, we don't have to get complicated, and we can immediately go to that point on a chart. Okay, well, let's get started and learn about subdivisions of trends and counter trends. We're going to begin learning about the subdivisions of a 5-wave impulse trend.